The Nepean Housing Corps has contracted us to repair 5 walkways for them. It's a great opportunity to do some tutorials, some explanations, some things, highlights of the different skills involved in interlock repair, as well as different things to watch out for. First things first, we should ask the question, why are we here? Right here we're at about 9 inches, a little under 9 inches of a step, and if we scroll our way over this way, wow, that's a lot there. Ontario Building Code says about 8.25 inches is the maximum height for a step. So obviously this step isn't the code, that needs to be fixed. As well, it's just uneven along, it's unsightly. As well, you can see it's eroding underneath this step. Whoever built this step didn't fill it properly. Another thing we're seeing is what's called creep. It's creeping this way, creeping that way. That's when the pavers move out. They move out, and all of a sudden they're not being tightly squeezed together and not interlocking anymore. That's partially due to the erosion here, but partly it's due to the fact that there's no snap edge, rigid edge restraint, any edge restraint of any kind holding it in. Another thing that's happening here, it's just dirt and weeds in between. There's no polymeric sand left, it's all eroded. Possibly was never in there. So when we reinstall everything, we'll use polymeric sand. It's like this side there, this side there, and this is over there, and we'll just stack the blocks. You gotta stage your supplies correctly. So always make sure, this is nicely away, but here we now can't really do this pin zone pattern, have it accessible. We're gonna have to push it further out. What we're going to do now is control this erosion with some erosion control geotextile, some geosynthetic lean line fabric. So what I'm going to do is I will ask Kyle to grab one end of the measuring tape. Thank you, Kyle. And we will just measure out this area here. Across, go all the way down. And we have 15 feet. All right, so we're gonna be putting snap edge in, edge restraint as they call it. So we gotta get this like 3 inches wider roughly, so that we can be putting in a proper edge support, so that we don't have to deal with all this creeping and stuff. We have got all the bricks out. Kyle's getting the last few pavers out. He's lifting with his legs, not with his back. And so now we're going to start scraping down to the good stone dust, good gravel, good layer out. You can use your rake. I like using the shovel. We want to get down to clean, nice, clean dust. Everything that would compromise it, we want to make sure it's all pretty simple, pretty standard. We're just gonna go like this. Lay it out like so. My good man Kyle is gonna bring me a shovel of gravel. Put it right there. Oh, you wanna overlap the fabric so that any water that flows along it will flow with the overlap. Yeah, that's good. Oh, solid. There we go. And now we want to set our heights. So we were going for a height of 7 inches of the step. And what I could do is I could say, okay, 2 3/8 inches plus 7 inches is 9 3/8 inches. 2 3/8 being the brick paver height. So I can go 9 3/8. Right about there. Okay, we're close. Another way to do it is I can go 7 inches and grab a block. Find a nice clean block. That's like a cheat way. And it's fine to do that. Grab this guy. See, okay, well, I'm gonna want a 7-inch step. Currently at, how about that? What'd you know, 6.5 inches. We added about 2 inches of gravel there, which means it's gonna compact down about a 1/2 inch. So if we come up to about 6.5 inches, when we compact, we're gonna be right where we wanna be, just below our grade, so we can add a nice layer of stone dust and finish things up.
I find it helpful when getting your gravel in, to use the wheelbarrow to dump small piles of gravel around the grade where you're going to need it, rather than trying to dump one big pile and then shoveling it or raking it around.
Shovel nicely grabs the whole thing. Rake just collects the fines. See? Sorry, the big guys. Just collects the big guys. Shovel takes care of everything.
I set up several different pavers, check the heights against the concrete. The concrete itself isn't perfectly even, so again, I'm not fully going off of that. And like I said, I had a couple inches of play to work with. I wanted to ensure that there was good water flow. There was good drainage off the sides down to the path as well. And I also was adjusting for compaction factors. So I brought my gravel up to about 6.5 inches so that it would compact down to about 7 inches. Maybe if it compacted a little bit more, 7.5, and then I'd be adding my stone dust as well.
Right now we just call this 2/3 of a bubble. And then if we come across this way, let's see what it is right now. It's a little bit less. So we can bring this middle section up a bit, which will then make this slope less steep. Go like this here. Just like this. Now we're at about a 1/4 of a bubble there. Come back down here. We're at let's back down a little bit. Okay. Let's see. About a 1/4 bubble and about a 1/4 bubble. So it's pretty. This is just like a quick and dirty way of doing this to make sure it's a good gradual slope overall.
It's very important to water the gravel before you compact. Watering ensures that the molecules and such can properly settle together and have some physical tension there. Without water, it's just going to jiggle the gravel around. Tamping is integral. There's a lot of interlock projects fail because of a lack of compaction. So running the plate tamper, plate compactor over the gravel properly is essential. So here I have my stone dust. We are trying to get a good stone dust grade over the whole thing to ensure uniform smoothness, uniform slope, everything will be sitting nicely. We are going to compact this grade. So it's not the last one, but we want it to be just as perfect as it was the last one.
First we water, then we compact, then we grade again. Because the plate tamper didn't get everywhere, so using the hand tamper to get everywhere. When we put them back in, there's nothing compromising them.
Often when we're relaying a walkway, patio, etc., we're basing it off of something that's been corrupted. So the edge of that asphalt walkway that we're meeting is not a nice, straight, square structure to lay off of. So we set up a string line, which will be straight. We set up the string line, and then we set up a 3, 4, 5 string line. So 2 string lines in a right angle situation. Billy on the left, he's marking out 3 feet with my help, marking out 3 feet. Ian's the one who's playing around with the line there. Mark's gonna come over and help me mark out 4 feet. Mark marks out 4 feet. So we set up 4 feet, 3 feet, and then what's gonna happen is Ian's gonna move slightly to the right, slightly to the left to ensure that we're square. And that's when I come across to where Billy and Mark are on their points, and I make sure there's 5 feet exactly between the points on the line. So a 3 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot triangle will always be perfectly square. That's just simple geometry. We get a good square line to lay off of. Now we know that our blocks that we lay in, our pavers, are going to be laid in nicely, laid in straight, square to each other. There's not going to be any weird twisting lines in the pavement.
So I'm gonna fix this line. If you come up here, you'll see how it's really squiggly. not great. So I'm gonna make it great. We're gonna make this line great again, as they say. The rigid edge or snap edge restraint to keep the interlock from shifting outwards, preventing horizontal creep. Like a glove. It's always perfectly there.
So just the rule of thumb for snap edge, place one spike every foot. So put one in, then go 1, 2, 3, that's your spike. 1, 2, 3, that's your spike. When hammering in your landscape spikes, your 12-inch nails, you want to hammer it so that it's sitting about a ½ inch, a quarter inch above the snap edge. You don't want to press it all the way in because that will kind of warp the snap edge. And also if you hammer it all the way in, it kind of bounces once it hits the snap edge and comes back up and is loose. I always put soil around my interlock when I'm done because I usually have raised it up. I've gone a little higher than the lawn around it. Or if you've been working in a garden, it's good to touch that up too. Some people tend to put the soil in as the last step. I always do it second to last. Get my soil in nicely so that when I sand, everything's been cleaned off, everything's done. I'm not going to be maybe throwing some soil on my sand.
I'm gonna dust off all the soil and such, make sure everything's nice and clean. Then probably do one last once over everything, get some seed in here, just do some last final touches, then we're gonna sand.
It is integral to make sure your interlock is perfectly clean before you put your sand in. Dirt or moisture or anything really will compromise your polymeric sand polymers, the sand itself. So I always go over it very, very carefully to ensure with the blower, with the broom, with my fingers to pick out anything that's not moving.
We're finally at the final step, sanding. We're not gonna dump the whole sand back out. We're gonna dump it out in like swooshy lines. Because what happens is if you dump it all out in one area, the sand ends up it's called grading itself. So the broom will move just the big particles around, and the fine particles will get stuck. So we put the sand in, do this first base layer, fill everything in nicely, then we compact it, run the compactor over it, settle the sand in the joints, and after that we do a final clean off, final sanding. It's very important to get the sand in all the different cracks and crevices and crannies, through the snap edge too. If you don't have it here, then you have a point of failure where it can shift outwards, water can get in. Tamping the pavers on the sand, it settles the sand in the joints because the sands are like Jenga pieces. When you jiggle them, they settle together and compact down a bit. So you'll see a difference for sure.
One thing to note is that while you do have to accommodate for some settling as you do this last compaction layer, and you do have to keep that in mind. If on a 7-inch step there, you think, okay, well I gotta raise my stone dust up to 6 and 5/8 inches or something of the sort, depending on how much you're raising it before and how thick your stone dust layer or bedding sand layer is. But this is to settle the sand in the joints. So don't count on your blocks dropping a crazy amount. Make sure you understand how much they're gonna drop. But for example, against the asphalt walkway that we were talking about earlier, where we did not add basically any material because it was already level, it's not going to drop.
We are doing the final sand. So it's filling up every last little crack and cranny. Then we're going to dust it off with the blower and water it to activate the polymers in the sand. I'm going to water the sand to activate the polymers. What you do, you sort of dust it in a bit of water, then you go again over it again with a little bit more water and let the water saturate a little further into the joint. Patio is fully relayed. So there's a slight slope, crown in the middle, so it slopes off to the side, and then a good strong slope away from the foundation. Regraded the soil as well away from the foundation. Just watered the sand. Sand should be safe to walk on in 30 minutes, or rains, it shouldn't be messed up. I always say wait 24 hours before putting any furniture on or anything. That's why I always tell people, just wait, let it set. We're good now. It's just there to be admired, and pretty impressed with myself. So now I'm just gonna sit here till 30. Whew.